pop song that doesn't sound stupid.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really honestly pretty difficult to do. You know, it really is. I mean, the hardest kind of song to write is a melodic song that doesn't have a lot of lyrics, just by the way the melody is structured. It's really difficult to say I love you in a song in a way that hasn't been said before and
Yeah.
in a way that doesn't turn people off. The Beatles were masters at it. They just did such a great job at it. You know, when you're talking about bands like those guys, like the Stones, you know, they all had a very unique image, of course, but you know, the whole Lennon and McCartney thing, there was really something to that. Very, very rarely did those guys ever write in the same room at the same time, believe it or not. They had this friendly little competition, and they were always trying to, Paul and John were always trying to one-up each other. And they were doing such a great job at it. And then just when you think that's the only talent in the band, along comes George, and he writes, "Here Comes the Sun."
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's inspiring to me. On one hand, it makes you go, well, why even bother? I mean, the best has been written. But I always say that a songwriter is nothing but a conduit. None of this stuff comes from artists. It doesn't come from us. It comes through us. You know, it's like, you know, here's how I think a listener could relate. I want you to imagine you're in that state, either right before you wake up fully or right as you're falling asleep. You're not quite asleep and you're not quite awake. You know, that twilight sort of state? That is when all of my songwriting ideas come to me. That's when the best ideas happen. And when I moved to Nashville and I immersed myself in a world of professional songwriters, I realized that these cats could get in that state at will, anytime. They could just kind of go into that whole zone. They could tune out the white noise of the real world and life and all of our problems that we all, you know, kind of pour into our brains that cloud us up. They could do that at will. And the best songwriters I found could actually get into that state. And we have an expression in, you know, writing songs, dare to be stupid. You can't let your internal editor and your creator be in the same room at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure, I mean, you're a creative person. You know, when you come up with your ideas, you know, we can self-edit ourselves to death. And if you do that, nothing great's ever going to come.
Right, right. When I think of a guy my age, when I think about the Beatles, and I'm in my late 30s, and I hear those songs like you're talking about with Lennon and the songwriting and so forth, when I hear those things, I hear those songs, and I say, well, it's not so much different than what people are doing now. It's not so much different than what, you know, the bands that I listened to in high school, like Journey, you know, like Nelson. It's not so different than what they're doing. But then I have to remember back that they're the ones that changed all that. Everybody kind of harkens back to that style of songwriting that does, you know, the pop or the rock format. So it's always puts it in perspective for me.
I think so too. And you know, I mean, these are the guys that actually started the whole thing. But I mean, talk about raising the bar. I mean, think of just, I mean, what worked really well was they got you hooked in with a great melody. Some of those melodies are the ones that you're in the shower singing for months afterwards, or they'll just pop into your head. You can't get them out. And that was McCartney's contribution. And then, you know, the sour to the sweet, it was kind of a sweet and sour thing, was John, a great example. Paul, you got to admit it's getting better. It's getting better all the time. John, it can't get no worse.
Right, right.
And they worked really well that way. And I'm not saying that's exactly what I got going with Matt, but we definitely do have different sensibilities and different ways we look at life. I'm definitely a lot edgier and a lot more sardonic, and Matthew is more, you know, definitely more of like a here comes the sun kind of guy. And for whatever reason, it just works really well.
Right, right. And I was going to ask about something that you hit on earlier, Gunnar. When I talk to artists, they always say, you know, to a person that, hey, we never stop writing. You said something about a new album coming out, going back to the Frontiers thing, and they wanted to do an album of all new Nelson material, which certainly makes us all very, very happy. Is that something that's moving along quite nicely? Are we almost there? Are we just getting started? Where do you guys stand with that?
It is available on iTunes. It's been released in Europe, and you can get it on iTunes and on Amazon. It's called Lightning Strikes Twice. And this is a brand new Frontiers record. It is designed to be the seamless follow-up of our After the Rain debut record that we should have been allowed to make back then, but we're not allowed to because we were preempted by the rise of grunge. Right. So the reviews that are coming in, Rob, from Europe are honestly the best reviews we've ever had. We're actually not used to this kind of critical acclaim, but the record, I know everybody's in love with their most recent thing, but I mean, I loved our debut, but I honestly believe that this is the strongest Nelson record we've ever made.
What Gunnar alludes to when he talks about the critical review is that album was just, so us here in the States might not have a working knowledge of it so much, but it was released in Europe, and it was released to massive critical acclaim, like Gunnar says. We have some links. Liz was nice enough to send us some links to a video and so forth, and we're going to get all that stuff put up, and also links where you can go and get the record available. Yeah, that's the record that we were talking about, Lightning Strikes Twice. I didn't know if there was maybe another record in the works with Frontiers. I knew that was released. I think that was released in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, right, Gunnar?
Well, technically, it was released in Europe in 2010 in November, late November. It was in time for the Firefest Festival in London. It was the first time Nelson actually ever played the UK, and so they wanted to bring it out there, and they did, and I'm really grateful for that. I actually, I was working on the follow-up record to that, and I've got it about 85% done. But I've recently heard back from Frontiers that they're not interested in doing a follow-up record right now. So, we might continue our relationship with Frontiers. I would like to see that happen. I like Serafino quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But if they don't want us over there, then we're certainly not going to stay any place that isn't thrilled to have us and isn't ready to, really do whatever it takes to get this stuff out there. So we'll just find another home. But the record's already 85% done. The thing is that I am such a fan of the Lightning Strikes Twice record that I want to make sure it gets, its proper release in the United States, where we sold most of our records, and that it really gets its time, because, man, I spent 2.5 years making that thing, and it was truly, Rob, the best I could possibly do from a songwriting, playing standpoint, sonic standpoint. We've got 20 years worth of experience in the studio and on tour and in the studio as players, as producers, and this record really reflects that. I'm really proud of the work.
Yeah, I think that, personally, if that is able to get U.S. distribution, and Gunnar, and probably even to some extent myself, can get into a whole bunch of garbage about artists and distribution and rights and so forth, and we certainly won't do that. But just hope and pray, folks, that this thing does find some U.S. distribution, because it is, as Gunnar said, a fantastic album. And every review that I read in doing research for this interview, and everything that I was able to catch that Liz gave to me, was absolutely spectacular. So we're really pulling for that, Gunnar.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It really comes down to this. It comes down to the market itself. Clearly, as your show will testify to, there are millions of people that love this style of music, whether it's a part of their past or a part of their present. They love the exuberance, the power, the passion, the melody, the chops, everything, the lifestyle, everything that's involved in it, whether or not they're using it as a time machine to a time in their life when they felt 10 feet tall and bulletproof, or they want to have nothing but a good time now because times are tough, man. Let's face it. Regardless, there is a huge market for this music out there that makes a lot of the quote, I'm using air quote here, the hipsters at a lot of the major labels very uncomfortable. They'd like to be in denial, but you can't deny 3 million listeners on your show.
Right.
So it's just about getting that out there, because it comes down now, and I hate to say this, to the almighty dollar. If the big labels and the big distribution companies feel like they can make money, they'll work it. If they don't feel like they can make money, they won't. And so it does come down to the fans saying, hey, this is something that we want. Make it available. It's a different world out there. Obviously, it's an iTunes sort of world. If you're into having physical product like I am, I like looking at liner notes and stuff. I'm a relic that way. I dig that. I miss vinyl LPs because the artwork was so much cooler, But if you really want to have a CD in your hands, then it's an Amazon sort of world. And the major labels, it's really tough out there for bands that have a following that want to continue to release music, because there's not a whole lot of space left anymore at some of the biggest music retailers. Historically, like Best Buy was one of the biggest ones for CD sales, and Target and Walmart. These were the big music retailers, and they have minimized the amount of actual floor space that they earmark for music sales. Like you wouldn't believe, it's gone down about 90% in the last 3 years. So actually walking into your Walmart, let's say, and impulse buying the next Warrant record is going to be hard for you, because you're not going to have that record sitting there anymore. You're going to have to actively be informed about it on a show like yours, and actively get online and go out and get it and either download it or send for it on Amazon. That's the kind of world